What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, I'm Melissa. So here we are with another monthly ranking. We are already at April and I have only seen 6 new releases. And just a quick disclaimer, sometimes in the monthly rankings, I may put a movie that came out maybe not in April, maybe it came out earlier, but I didn't watch it until April. So I'm still gonna be counting it in my ranking. And so in this case, there is going to be one movie like that. It actually came out in March, but I didn't see it till April. It is a movie that I did not do a video review for. So if you guys are going through the ranking in this video and you're wondering and you want to know more of my thoughts on a particular movie, I have done movie reviews for all of the movies I'm going to be talking about, except for one of them, and I'll let you know which one that is. But since we do have 6 movies to get through, let's go ahead and get started. Coming in at number 6 is Magazine Dreams. This movie has gone through a lot of different types of controversies because of the legal troubles of Jonathan Majors. And I have to say, for me, the whole conversation around separating art from artists is not always so black and white for me. I think it can get pretty gray and muddy personally for me, and maybe you feel the same way, some of you out there. And for this movie in particular, when it finally had its theatrical release in March, there were some things that came into light about his past legal troubles that kind of made things feel fresh. So it did make me feel a bit conflicted about it. And I just wanted to make sure to have a conversation about it because I did want to address the purple elephant in the room. And in this particular case, Jonathan Majors does play a character that kind of has a penchant for violence. So when you have that in mind while watching the movie and you're thinking about his real life, the conversation of separating art from artist is sometimes difficult. So that's just something that I had in my mind and heart that I wanted to share. So this leads me into my number 6 movie, Magazine Dreams. Now, there have been so many reviews that have said the best thing about this is Jonathan Majors, and I have to agree. I didn't necessarily need to watch Magazine Dreams to know that Jonathan Majors is a talented actor. I believe he is a trained actor. He went to Yale, I believe, and he's very good in this. The thing with Magazine Dreams, though, is the movie feels pretty choppy. He plays a character that has different instances with different characters throughout the entire movie. And I think it's just under 2 hours, or it is 2 hours. And each time he interacts somebody new, it is a possibility for a whole other movie. There's different plots that are going on here. He meets different types of people. And I just had an issue with that because it feels like it's kind of all over the place. The movie feels like it's telling me, okay, here's a scene here. Here's a scene here. Here's a scene here. And it's very character driven, fine, but I wanted more from this. I do think the cinematography is good here. It pretty much basks in this kind of very dreamlike, glowy state, which makes a lot of sense when you think about the title of this. And he plays a person who has big dreams of becoming a bodybuilder. And that's where the title comes from, because bodybuilders oftentimes make the covers of the magazine. So he has those big dreams and aspirations, and he's very fixated. But he also plays somebody who you think may have some type of mental illness. He definitely has emotional issues. And there are instances where he does have some people that he can talk to, like his grandfather or his therapist, but these are people who ultimately do not help him at all. And then I think the movie ends with us interpreting this to be a hopeful type of ending. But I have an issue with that because I feel like it was completely unearned. We do not see his character do any type of work that earns that kind of hopeful ending. What we see in this movie is a lot of There's a lot of cringy moments. There's a scene in here with Haley Bennett that is probably one of the world's worst movie first dates. She looks more and more uncomfortable as the scene goes on. So props to the acting, not only Majors, but also the other actors who interact with this character in the movie. It is a very cringy scene of that first date. But then we never see her again. And then that happens with several characters in this movie. He interacts with them, but then we never hear from them again. Then there's like little bursts of these little like vignettes that happen throughout. But then like there's just so many loose ends. And I was not a fan of that. I would have preferred a more cohesive story. Coming in at number 5 is Until Dawn. This is a movie that I just watched 2 days ago and I dropped a review for. And I thought it was very bad. I did. The movie feels like I'm watching people on a ride. It feels like it's pretty cardboard cutout people. Not even people. They are not really characters or humans. It feels like an outline for a movie rather than an actual film. I was very disappointed. I'm just that person that is always hopeful when I decide to take the time to go out and watch something. And then, you know, I saw that this one was kind of having some lukewarm reviews, and I'm not a video game player, so I did not play Until Dawn. And I know I kept hearing fans were disappointed that it was so different than the game, but I was coming at it as somebody who didn't have those preconceived notions, so I didn't have to be disappointed with the changes that they were going to make because I'm just watching it as a movie lover. But I really didn't like it. You don't really get to know the characters that much, so you don't have any emotional investment, and it just feels pretty repetitive because by the nature of the story, it's pretty much a Groundhog Day situation where they keep dying over and over again. They try to kind of explain the lore, but to be honest, I just really didn't care for the story or the characters, so I just didn't really care about the lore, and this just did not work for me on any level. Coming in at number 4 is Hell of a Summer. I gotta be honest, I think I barely remember this movie. I think this was the first movie I saw in April, and I think had it just been a straight up slasher summer camp movie, this probably would have performed better amongst the masses. I think this pretty much didn't have a overall positive review with the general movie going public. It felt very uneven. It is trying to be a coming of age story while also being a slasher flick. And I remember having just a little bit more fun and had more interest when this was just a slasher movie, but it does feel very derivative. I call it a Scream try-hard. Sorry if this sounds mean, but that's just how I felt about it. I was like, we've seen this done better in a better franchise, okay? Coming in at number 3 is actually a movie I didn't love very much. I am sad that April is very much mirroring how I felt about March. So far, the movies in Q1 and Q2 of 2025 have left me mostly disappointed. I have seen maybe now 20 plus films, and I could count maybe like a handful of movies that I actually like really, really enjoyed. So that's just my little rant there. Hopefully the rest of the year can deliver better. I am praying to the movie gods. But number 3, Drop. So what this has going on for it, I like Megan Fahey in it. I think she's a good actress. I hope she gets more work after this. She comes from the White Lotus fame. Brendan Sklenar is also in Drop. He is a good actor. He's also a very good looking leading man. Drop, for me, I was excited to watch because I like thrillers, and this seemed like a really interesting premise where this widow who has not been dating for many years finally goes out on a first date in a very, very long time. And she is being pretty much blackmailed into finding a way to kill her date. Otherwise, her son will be killed. And it sounds like an interesting premise, right? Sounds like something fun to watch on a Friday. But this is pretty much a one setting type of movie. So what happens is it got very, very repetitive for me. Okay. The movie follows her trying to figure out who this is. That happens so many different times. The movie shows us that she's trying to figure out a way how to stop this. She's trying to figure out a way who can help her, but that happens so many different times. So the repetitiveness got to me. It got very bland to me pretty fast, and a lot of it felt very corny to me. For a lot of movies, you have to suspend your disbelief. That's just kind of like the, I guess, social unspoken contract you have as the viewer, and then there's the filmmakers. I'm totally fine with doing that a lot of times, but with this one, I just couldn't really get there, and it was probably because I just did not find it entertaining enough. Coming in at number 2 is a foreign film, I believe from Norway. I could be wrong about that. It is called The Ugly Stepsister. This actually debuted back in January at Sundance. This is by a debut filmmaker, and it pretty much tells the tale of the story from the stepsister's point of view from the story Cinderella. Now, you may know that fairy tales are actually originally pretty dark and fucked up, and that is where this movie is coming from. It is fairy tale like by way of the aesthetics. There's lots of pastels that are used, but there's also this sort of uneasiness that you also feel because of the things that the character has to go through. She has to go through so many different types of external changes and also some internal ones, if you know, you know, because she's very much under pressure to look a certain type of way so that she could be married off and take her family out of being destitute. And some of these things were very grotesque. This is a body horror, by the way, if I didn't mention that already. And there are certain things she has to do to her nose, to her eyes, and the filmmaker of this uses extreme close-ups for those. So if you ate before, you're gonna regret it. You might feel squeamish if you don't like extreme close-ups of certain gory things that are happening. Watch out. And there are some pretty graphic nudity scenes that can make you question what was the purpose of this. For me, I explained it in my head this way. Well, the ugly stepsister, whose name is Elvira in this movie, is she's pretty much a sheltered girl. She's very much manipulated by the environment around her and by her own mother. And these graphic things that she witnesses is kind of taking away her innocence, and it's making her see opportunities for how she can take advantage of things so that she can move up and kind of like beat her sister out of it, you know, Cinderella. So yeah, there's a lot of messed up things that happen here. It is pretty gross. And one of the last few scenes that I kept thinking about and that I keep talking about really kind of got to me. I think it lasted a very long time. It was very nasty. The only word that I will leave you with here is tapeworm. Coming in at number 1, it is no surprise here. It was the best movie that came out in April. It is on my thumbnail, and it is Sinners. I was so excited to watch this because I remember they had announced this project being in development many years ago, and then when it finally came into fruition and it came out, I was so excited, and I finally saw it. Wow. Sinners is a movie that I watched on the opening day of Thursday, and then I watched it again that Saturday. I went to an open captions showing because I felt like I needed to have captions on the screen to be able to really kind of try to download and digest, because there are all the characters are they are using some thick Southern accents, so I wanted to be able to understand what they were saying. It's one of those movies that I think you can look at it and focus on something each different time. So the first time, what really stood out to me was the music. The second time I watched it, I really tried to focus more in on the themes of it, because it's Ryan Coogler. You know he's going to have commentary in his film. This also led me to watching other reviews and listening to podcasts about it. It is a movie that is definitely a conversation starter. Like I said, I think the music is a whole character in this, and to my understanding, it is what inspired Ryan Coogler to make this movie was an uncle of his who was very much into blues music. And then, of course, there is that scene, you know what I'm talking about, that happens in the middle of this. That's that one long tracking shot. I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't seen it. That keeps getting talked about. I have to say, at first, when I first watched it, it kind of like, it feels kind of jarring. But then I watched the movie again, like I told you, and it has me just like, I keep on thinking about it. Because at a certain point, I was like, okay, is this literal? Is this figurative? And to me, I think it's both. That scene has to be both because of what Remick, the lead vampire, what he says to certain characters in the movie is what leads me to thinking that this is a literal thing, but then it's also figurative because we're kind of seeing like generations and culture evolve. I love the discussion that's happening around what the vampirism represents in the movie. And I like that Ryan Coogler made it a bit more complex because Remick is the vampire in here that is turning people against their will. You know, he's not really asking for their consent on whether he could turn them or not. But Ryan Coogler also wrote him as an old Irish vampire. And there are certain lines in the movie where he is able to relate to the Black characters because of certain similar things that have happened in both of their backgrounds. There's things that he can relate to. And so there are certain things that he wants and he tries to get that by, you know, turning people into vampires. Again, I'm being kind of vague and I don't want to over communicate it in case you guys haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait to keep talking about this movie for the rest of the year. It's going through some very ridiculous controversies right now because of the box office and because of the rights that Ryan Coogler gets to have in 25 years, which he's not the first director to do so. So it's being made into a whole mountain. It's ridiculous. I am hoping we see him working on more original things. I know he's doing the X-Files next, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of bummed about because that's not an original piece, but maybe he's very passionate about the X-Files and he'll bring a new freshness to it, which is, you know, if that ends up being good, that's gonna be great. But I was just hoping for more things like Sinners, not like Sinners, but you know what I mean, like just more original pieces, because I love it when we see directors doing what they have to do, you know, one for them, and then they can do some things for themselves, like we've seen past directors do before. Thank you guys so much for checking out my April ranking. Please let me know how you would rank the movies that you watch. If you are liking this content, please go ahead, hit subscribe, hit the like button. It really helps me out. And please go ahead and leave me a comment because that really helps with YouTube to show that you're interacting with it. It helps to push out the visibility and then we can grow our community and we can all be nerds together talking about movies. Thanks again, and I'll catch you guys next time.